Thank you very much, Adam. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of you, wherever you are. Thank you for the opportunity to have me moderate this session. As you said, Adam, um, leadership is it's an important area for us to be looking at as leaders, as emerging leaders, as practicing leaders, as people advising leaders, in terms of what are some of the changes, what are some of the strategies, what are some of the aspects that we all need to be incorporating within ourselves, within our organizations, as we're going through this. Some of the common themes that we hear are, uncertainty. I think we've heard that term so much in 2020, and it just continues to be, in vogue today as the economy is changing, as the hits are changing. Agility is something that I think we're all trying to be prepared for. The only constant is change, as the saying goes. So as we continue to sort of look at how we evolve businesses and how we look at people, how we look at technology, how we look at processes in the future of the digital world, I'm very delighted to have an esteemed panel of leaders that I would love to sort of give a quick introduction here. And so we have Marcelo Fernandez from Chevron, who's a product owner for a digital twin, and he's building some fantastic, very complex digital twin environments. Ben Randell, who's a product line manager at Chevron, and he advises a variety of business units and leaders of how to plan for the future. We have Vaseem Khan, who's the global VP for digital analytics for net zero and carbon hydrogen at McDermott. And he runs a very large team and practice as he's sort of evolving this business and their clients into the future. Alessandro Pilia, who's the managing partner and co-founder of Kairos 3D, and he runs an exclusive sort of environment industry company that is focused on the oil and gas and providing remote work and augmented reality and virtual reality type applications. So fantastic to hear from him. And then last but not the least, Shannon Catcher, who's executive director for digitization and data at the Gas Technology Institute. And she spends a lot of time, working with a number of different companies as they're evolving into the future. So, so thank you all for joining us today. And one as we kick this off here, I want to start by saying, when I use a word, as somebody said, it means just what I choose it to mean, nothing more, nothing less. And that's that's from Lewis Carroll, Through the Looking Glass, Alice's Adventures in Through the Looking Glass. Digital twin, fortunate or unfortunate, kind of taken on that perspective where each one of us sort of means something different when we say it. Overall, themes may be similar, but there's subtleties, there are differences, and the term has evolved here over the years. So maybe just to level set for all of us and our audience here, one thing that perhaps I would kick it off and turn it over to you all is, what is in your mind, from your perspective, from where you're sitting, what do you think of as a digital twin and the future of a digital twin? So perhaps, and maybe you can just tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then just maybe give your perspectives on digital twin. Marcelo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Would you like to start, please? Yes.
Yeah, I'm honored to kickstart this discussion. So I think this question is the most asked questions nowadays, right? So from my perspective, a digital twin is a virtual representation of a physical asset or system. What current reflects what's reality, right? This representation will pretty much use integrated data, providing easy and intuitive access to make data-driven business decisions, and also support advanced workflows. So digital twins will rely on three main components that are data, models, and visualization. We have been trying to create digital twins for the last 30 years, so it's not a new concept. But the products that we were able to create in the past were affected by the maturity of some key technologies, as industrial Internet of Things, the ability to handle big data, lack of data science capabilities in the companies, and also cloud computing, right? So for me, I'm working on this field for a long time now. I used to be an iField advisor for Chevron. So in terms of Chevron, this means I was leading digital oil field efforts that is pretty much trying to mirror our assets, our physical assets in digital ways in order to come with kind of the early stages of a digital twin. Right, so I'm currently the product owner for Digital Twin and Rich Media Data for Chevron on the IT Foundation platform, and has been an interesting and very challenging journey to come out with digital twins for Chevron. It's a huge company, more than 60,000 employees, operating in more than 80 countries. So it's pretty challenging. So I will stop here, and you can take over.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marcelo, and really appreciate your views and visualization. Very interesting. So maybe I'll turn it over to you, Shannon, and see if perhaps you can again introduce yourself briefly and share your perspectives on what you think about digital twins.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you. It's great to be here today. I think, I clearly agree with everything that Marcelo said. I think one thing I would add to what he said is we can also represent our processes within the way that we represent digital twins. So the digital representation of our physical assets and processes, I think, give us a more holistic perspective to be able to not only visualize and increase the reliability of our models, but also give us more of a perspective on change management. And I think that as leaders, that's a huge role that we have to play. So I would say that, my unique perspective coming from GTI, we're an R&D nonprofit organization working with across the entire energy value chain, from how we make it to how we move it to how we use it. And I work with integrating and collaborating with all different technologies. And I think we all know that we're using more and more disparate technology today. And I think as we integrate those solutions into not only our physical systems, but digital representations of those systems, we have to have a better understanding and a more system of systems approach on how we can represent that information and how we can use that to predict what might happen in the future, not only with the processes that we're running, but also our organization and how that affects our people. So, and my role at GTI also is to sort of lay out our strategic vision for our digitalization and how we can collaborate externally and operationalize that ambition, especially with all the net zero goals and the time frame that we're working with. We're working with a lot of change in a much shorter amount of time. So it's a really exciting time to be in the energy industry, and especially working with digital solutions.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Shannon. And you're right. You mentioned net zero and transition of energy. So maybe, Vaseem, I'll go to you next, since this is an area that I know you're driving as well at McDermott, in addition to a number of other hats you wear.
Okay, thank you, Shiridar, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Vaseem Khan. As Shiridar said, I run the digital and analytics program in McDermott, but I also run the energy transition program in McDermott. My background is in operations, so when I come to a definition, for me, it's a very practical definition, and I think I actually really appreciate what Shannon said, because we tend to forget that the digital twin is not only a digital manifestation of the physical asset, but it's also a representation of our work processes, or the processes that underlie the operation of the asset. I would go a little bit further, is that the digital twin is integrally tied to a digital thread. Why do I need the digital thread? Because that is the means in which I keep the digital twin updated. Because a digital twin is not a static object. Even in our world, so I work for McDermott, we are a project delivery company. So for us, a digital twin starts at project concept stage and it continues until you retire the asset. So it's almost like a human being. It grows, it becomes more mature, it becomes richer in terms of its knowledge base, all the way through its retirement, or the asset retirement. So please don't see the digital twin as a static object, which once it is built, it just stays the same. It's a living being, which matures as time goes on. Um, what do you, without going into, I know we're going to be debating this as the time goes on, but to me, the digital twin is the single font, the single version of information of anything. So if you need information, you go to the digital twin, which houses all of that information. So back to you, Shuda.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Vaseem, and a lot of insightful things there. One thing that caught my attention was this notion of a digital thread, which is woven throughout the life cycle of
Yeah.
of assets and things and beings and physical systems and processes and organizations. So it's fascinating. Maybe I'll turn it over to how we manage and monitor these assets. And Alessandro, I know there's a lot of experience that you've got in this space in terms of what does that world look like. So perhaps you can share a little bit about your thoughts as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Frieder, and very nice to be here with you all. Thank you very much also to the organization of this event. It's the first time we are participating as sponsor, and we are really happy to be part of the event. So, well, first of all, a couple of words about Kairos 3D. As Schroeder, you said earlier, Kairos 3D is a specialized vertical company whose only focus is 3D digital twin for the industrial market. Kairos 3D was founded in 2010 by experienced professional of the graphic industry, and this gave us the capability to build our own software platform that we have roadmapped and driven toward this vertical, this market, which gave us the opportunity to be the front runner together with other actors, of course, but we are at the front right now with this digital twin concept. Before starting up Kairos 10 years ago, I was director for the EMEA Oracle organization, where I was leading the enterprise performance management practice. So basically, I've always been working with data visualization, data for business intelligence. And now I have the honor and the luck to couple this data with very nice and sexy 3D environments. So my definition of digital twin will start with what the colleague from Chevron just said. So it's basically a virtual representation of a physical asset capable of replicating the physical appearance on a side, but also the current operating processes and current or predicted performance on the other. A very nice definition I heard yesterday by a colleague from Shell was that the digital twin is made up of three components: a data layer, a modeling of the data layer, and a visualization of the data. And I like this definition very much because it's enough abstract to describe the concept, because the digital twin is not a product that you can simply buy off the shelf and plug it in. A digital twin is a process, as Vaseem just properly mentioned, comparing it to the human life cycle. And basically, it's a methodology, a business process that connects something physical to the digital realm within your organization, enabling new level of insight and decision making. And based on the phase you are in the asset life cycle, the digital twin has to serve different data sets, has to provide different functionalities, And I like the comparison with the human life cycle, because like a human, when you are a baby, you have a certain kind of needs, of data feeding needs. When you grow up, your needs change, and also your attitudes change. So you have to provide and address new functionalities. And when you go toward the maturity, the situation would be different. And this is exactly how it is with the industrial digital twin. What we are seeing is that this is a concept in full evolution. It is just started. So it is extremely important to adopt an agile approach. And for instance, we see customers starting for requesting a digital twin for training purposes for field operators. Then, during the engineering design phase of the project, they understand that they can apply the same technology for virtual reality for virtual reality training. They apply it for smart review purposes. Or other customers that are starting with the digital twin request for integrated training. Integrated training means training that would address both the control room perspective and the field operation perspective. And then they understand that they can add great value in their visualization capability of the asset health status by visualizing data coming from the DCS on top of the 3D representation, and coupling this data with the expected performance data coming from the simulation system. So to analyze differences, deviations, and variances, and address those problems. So in the end, like Vaseem said, it is a tool for asset awareness that connects assets, data, documentation, and real-time information.
Thank you, Alessandro. Very, very insightful indeed. And I do agree with you on a lot of those aspects. And we speak about assets, and one of the things that, assets need to be, there is an assurance of assets that we need to be all thinking about, and especially from a safety and from a reliability and all of those perspectives. And and I think because I think you were a champion of one of these, several years ago at Chevron, in terms of what this transformation would look like, and now that's kind of what you do. So I would love to hear kind of your thoughts as well on this. Ben, can you hear me? Ben, are you able to hear me? Okay. So we'll come back to we'll circle back with Ben then. What I thought then, and just to sort of introduce myself here as the Chief Technology Officer at Spark Cognition, we are an AI-based and a technology platform provider for industrial companies in the AI space. So that's kind of what we do. So as part of my role, one of the things that I do is I get to speak with a number of leaders, and we provide we work with our partners in this journey of digital transformation that, as you all said, is a multi-year journey. So before I go into the next part of our conversation here, Ben, I don't know if you're back and if you can hear me okay?
I can, Sridhar. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. So I was just turning to you to see if you can maybe share your perspectives on this, since this is what you do, and you were a change agent at Chevron, so to speak, a few years ago in this journey.
Thank you, Sridhar. Sorry for the technical difficulties. It's great to be here, and I fully agree with all the other panelists' definitions. For me, I'll put it pretty simply. I think a digital twin, when fully implemented and calibrated, is the closest thing that humanity has ever had to predicting the future. And Vaseem already alluded to it being inherently dynamic. And that's what enables it to provide us with insights and with forecasts of scenarios that haven't yet happened. So it's not a new concept. Marcelo said that we've been working on this for decades, and I would extrapolate that even further and say that as humans, we've really been trying to model behaviors in our physical world at least since Newton's famous apple falling analysis, and arguably before that. But it's this present-day convergence of our physical and digital worlds, and this exponential increase in compute power and data acquisition capability that really mean today we can build models so accurate and enhance them so efficiently over time that we really can see the future before it happens. And this is what enables unprecedented safety, operational, and financial performance. So as you said, Sridhar, I live in the assurance space now, and my career has really spanned the wealth function for about a decade, and the last 5 years, just out of frustration, really, with the manual process and having to go and collect information and feed it into different systems, is how I found myself in this digital world. And so, digital twin for me is one of many tools, but it's a particularly powerful tool to help with my mission, which is really to engineer happiness. So, back over to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Ben. And you're absolutely right. So I think there's a lot of things we heard about. We heard data, we heard models, we heard visualization, we heard process, we heard people. To me, as as each of us, or each of you in the audience, as you're thinking about this from a leadership perspective, the things that I'd like to sort of the conversation now, as we think about this very sort of complex, ongoing process and journey that we need to be on. What I'd like to ask each of our panelists here is your perspectives on what some of the issues are and some of the themes that we need to be thinking about, or that our audience needs to be thinking about as leaders, as companies are either embarking on this journey of a digital transformation with a twin, or they're helping others embark this journey, vendor, or if they're a provider or supplier, etc. I mean, I think perhaps if we can maybe share your perspectives around that, and this time maybe I'll start with you, Ben, and see if you can share your perspectives on that. What are some of the core challenges that need to be most in people's minds as you're sort of going through this process yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Sridhar. I better get me while my microphone's still working. So I think the biggest challenge that I see from the digital twin is leaders relinquishing their control. And it comes to personality types. All leaders are different, we know that. A leader with decades of domain knowledge, you could kind of view them as a bit of a poor boy digital twin, in that they have a comprehension of the system, they can quickly incorporate new information and come up with decisions, quite quickly. So that can be a big challenge to that paradigm if all of a sudden a digital twin can do a lot of what they maybe thought was their value add to the organization. So that would really be what I call a know-it-all leader. If you could contrast that with what I call a learning leader, then that actually wouldn't be a problem. They would embrace this and they would see it as a tool in their toolkit. And I think a second challenge that maybe is more common to both know-it-all leaders and learning leaders is the workforce accepting and incorporating digital twins and ultimately building trust. And Shannon mentioned change management in her opening remarks, and I couldn't agree more. That's everything here. So computers are extremely consistent. They'll always do what we tell them to do, and that can have unintentional consequences, either from malicious coding or just from bugs. And so I think for leaders, being able to establish rigorous safeguards and protocols to ensure that the digital twins remain accurate and reliable and can be trusted, that is probably the second biggest challenge for me.
No, and you're absolutely right. I think, and one thing that I would sort of make a quick comment on, and then I'll turn it over to Vaseem perhaps to share his thoughts, is, computers do what we tell them to do as long as they're doing programmatic work, right? The moment you start introducing, neural networks and learning systems and deep learning techniques, now there are probabilistic responses that are coming in as well. So back to our analogy about, becoming closer to sort of the human system, I think what we're trying to simulate there as well. But anyway, just thought I'll add that comment. But Vaseem, your thoughts?
Right. First, I want to compliment Ben. I've got two children. Neither of them are in the technical field, and they think what I do is really, really boring, right? And most people think engineers are boring. And I've never heard a two-word definition of what do I do. So, Ben, next time someone asks me, what do I do? I'm going to tell them that I engineer happiness, right? And you and I will need to catch up because I need to back up to how do I engineer happiness. But aside from that, I think my advice to people setting out on this journey or who've just started this journey is that you need to have a distinct problem you're trying to solve. We must avoid the shiny new toy syndrome, which is, here is a new product, here is a new concept, and I need to implement it. So as an engineer, and I know I tend to be, I tend to, it's part of group thinking of engineers, is that everything is a problem that needs to be solving. So think of the digital twin as a solution to a problem, not just something you need to foist onto people. That's important to me, number one. Two is make sure that your program has goals assigned to it, and make sure that the goals, at least the early ones, are quick win goals. You need to prove to your workforce, especially the more skeptical and frankly the older workforce, that this new product, this new tool will help your work, it'll make your life more interesting. So have a solution or have a problem you're trying to solve, and set out milestones in your journey that demonstrate to people that this is a useful product. The absolute thing you need to avoid, in my opinion, and frankly, McDermott, we went down the road and we learned it the hard way, is don't treat the digital twin as a hammer looking for a nail. That I've got a product, let me go find a solution for, let me go find a problem I can solve with this product. Moving on, and I don't want to be repetitive, so I'm not going to repeat what Ben's excellent comment on the challenge we've got with people. But we've got to remember, in our world, and I'm talking about the project delivery world, it is people, processes, and technology. We often get it backwards. We focus on the technology, we spend money fixing our processes, and we disregard the people. If you want to succeed in a digital program, put the people first. Technology is, to use a mathematical term, is a necessary but not a sufficient condition. Technology is an enabler. And as technologists, for people who are, because we're speaking on this panel, we obviously believe in technology. We tend to, I don't say disregard, but we tend to put on the back burner the people aspect of change management. And we rely on technology to say, hey, I've got a really fantastic product. Why haven't you fallen in love with it? So I think the cultural aspect, and I think Shannon touched on that as well, the change management aspect, which is how do I move people from the horse and buggy world to sit in a motor car, and then to accept that the electrical cars or fuel cell cars are the future, and the internal combustion engine, even though I love cars, is probably on its way out. That change process we need to put to the front and not to the back. Shooter, back to you.
No, thank you, Vaseem, and very well said on that. On the order, very insightful on the order of sort of how we should be thinking about people, process, and technology. And Shannon, I know you're very passionate about sort of from a people and change management perspective. So perhaps your thoughts maybe picking up on Vaseem's sort of reference to change management and the people aspect, or any other thoughts in terms of specific challenges.
Yeah, definitely. I think Vaseem and Ben both said some really important points, and I wholeheartedly agree. Our people are ultimately our most important and critical asset that we have, and we have to support them, and we have to use technology to help them and not to deter them from the things that we're expecting them to do. And I think as leaders, we have an obligation to support our workforce. And that might be through reskilling or upskilling the things that they're doing today to enable some of the digital transformation, again, with the goals in mind, not with the technology in mind, with the goals in mind, and building that in the right order. So I wholeheartedly agree with Vaseem. And Ben, something I think that you touched on too is about how we're sort of using the data. And I think that we also, as leaders, have a responsibility to know what data we're using and how we're using it and how it's being used to represent our future, because it is being used to represent our future, and we are using it to answer questions that we haven't been able to answer before. We're able to do simulations and really figure out the answers to complex problems that we're having. But we also have to know, and Sridhar, you kind of alluded to this as well, as we're implementing more predictive and prescriptive analytics, we have to understand where the data that came from, how we're using it, and use it responsibly. And we need to make sure that we're not we're avoiding unintended consequences, and that we're supporting our people in doing all those things. So I think to tie those pieces together, it's really important that we're responsibly and explainably using the technology and able to implement that in a way that supports and uplifts our workforce instead of leaving them behind.
No, very, very true. The comment, Shannon, about being responsible, I think, is taking a whole new meaning now, right? And I think with the speed at which the data and the results are being, the data is being used and results are being generated and decisions are being taken, agility's other side of the agility coin is about sort of the responsibility aspects that we need to deal with as leaders. So perhaps on agility and on sort of nimbleness and being able to do things in an efficient way, Alessandro, you touched upon sort of using a virtual environment in terms of in your case, even 3D case as an example. What are some challenges that you see as for example, if somebody is trying to manage an unmanned platform or an offshore platform or a hard to reach area, and now they're in this sort of virtual world, which looks and feels like the real world, but isn't really the real world. What are some of the challenges as people embark on these journeys at large scale, not as little prototypes, but at large scale? What are some of the things that people should be thinking about and watching out for?
Yeah, well, first of all, as somebody earlier said, there's a problem in trusting the technology. So, building the technology trust is a fundamental layer that every organization should create, and for this, the change management aspect for the addressing the established organization where there is the commander control structure, which is driving all the decision is something to address. Then, speaking about the 3D aspect, what a challenge that we face and we are facing is that we mostly based our digital twin on top of existing of 3D CAD models, and usually the 3D CAD models come out from the design and engineering phase, and they are not 100% precisely designed. So the problem is that the as-built is usually at least 10% different than the designed, and so a strong issue is the confidence if what you are looking at is being part of the 90% of the precise design, or you are in that 10% of uncertainty. But there are approaches and there are techniques to address this issue, and we are supporting these, of course. But of course, as I said earlier, we cannot think of, and someone in a panel said yesterday also the same thing, we cannot think of starting with 100% clean, pure, and perfect digital twin. If we wait for this condition to start, we will never start. So we have to take an agile approach also from the change management perspective and from the cultural perspective, and start creating a data-centric culture within enterprises. Little by little, it's not an easy change. It's not something you do in an instant. It is a process. It will be a process as well, but you need to address this first, and to do this, you need first to have the C-level sponsorship. Without the C-level sponsorship within the organization, you will never be able to spread this down to the organization. And then, as Shannon said, and also Ben, change management and changing the organization from vertical-oriented organization to laterally connected, so to be flexible, agile, and being able, to complete and deliver iterations of the wider picture, of the bigger picture, deliver iteration to business who can feel the benefits and start, sponsorship the next iteration even in a more profound and sustained way.
No, very good points there, Alessandro. Especially in this, the notion about don't try to be 100% precise or accurate on day one, because if you try to, you're probably never going to start, right? And I think it's okay to have some degree of um, hopefully pre-understood error rates, and sort of deal with the error rates as they come along. And then, as Vaseem alluded to earlier, it's a process, right? So you've got to continue to sort of tweak it as you go along. Marcelo, if I may turn to you, I know you're working on some very complex sort of, digital twinning. It's not about one asset. It's not about one area. It's about a very complex sort of network of things. As you're going through that process, and that's really still the beginning scale, right? Even that complexity is at scale, but it's still at the beginning of scale if you sort of look at relative perspectives. So, could you share maybe your thoughts on what kinds of complexities are you dealing with when you network these various different, assets and things and physical locations and so on? What are the things that we need to be thinking about as leaders?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would like to start answering this question, challenge the audience to think about what is driving competition today, right? So competition today in the digital area is becoming more of a battle of IT architectures, right? So combining your digital twins with AI will enable to respond to rapid changes like never before, right? But in order to achieve that, you pretty much need to have the proper resources in place. As Vaseem and Alessandro just mentioned, you need to have proper support of the C-level to do that. And I think everybody starts the same way on the digital twin journey. And pretty much it involves bringing an external consultant company or third-party company and addressing a POC for a small asset or something that you have in a more good condition to start with. So right after your first successful deployment, you become to the point that we call the scalability nightmare, right? We get to the point that we spend the money to come out with that POC that successfully become a production level digital twin, and then you just realize that you were in your learning journey, so you didn't have the vision of what it should be in the big picture, right? So you can't not leverage the effort that you did for your first one to expand this effort to other assets, because of they are pretty different in nature. It's kind of complicated if you don't have the proper digital strategy in place. So I agree with Alessandro. You don't need to have 100% of the business requirements for your digital twin, but you need to have a solid digital strategy in order to leverage the efforts of your first digital twins, and you can scale it up to a more broader vision of what is a digital twin program in a company like Chevron that operates in more than 80 countries with several complex facilities that range from green assets that has all the most modern things, IoT devices are installed in digital 3D models in place and all this stuff. And we also have like very old facilities, more than 100-year-old refineries, for example, and they are different requirements and different challenges in trying to come out with a digital twin for these different assets.
Fascinating. I think, Marcelo, as you mentioned, when you're working with sort of physical systems and when you're working with actual sort of elements, it's a whole different sort of complexity that we're dealing with, right? And then to that, you now add the people and the process mix. I think now the complexity dimensions just continue to multiply. one of the things that I think as we work in the AI world, and I've been in this space now for over a decade, working on a variety of different technologies and sort of implementations. One of the things that we realized this as we were working with our customers as well, and we converted this to an action because the thing that was hard for us to find as we work with our customers and a variety of leaders in this space is the ability to sort of, physical systems are still physical systems where you can touch and feel them. You know what they look like. You can smell them. You can listen to them and so on. And versus in the digital space, it is very abstract. So we actually took this very much to heart ourselves at Spark Cognition, and we opened a facility, north of Austin here, 50 acres, where it is the focus of that facility is really showcase AI in the digital and physical space, showcase autonomy. It's called HyperWorks, but it is really, and it's an ongoing thing, right? It's a baby step in this direction, but again, it's about trying to realize a lot of these complexities. So as we sort of are switch to an audience, please feel free to add your questions to the chat. But what I'd like to do is maybe just take a quick poll through all of you all here before we switch to audience questions, if there are some, and ask you if this sort of key takeaway that you would have a leader, if you're sitting with a whoever it is, right? Anybody in this ecosystem as a participant, a person who can actually take action, whether it's CEO of operations, a technology leader, what would be the one thing you would say would be the first thing to start and think about now, right? Irrespective of where you are in this journey, take one action. What would that one action be? And maybe this time I'll start with Alessandro. I'll start with you. And maybe if you can just keep it really sort of brief, that'd be fantastic. One action.
Yeah, one action. That's challenging. The challenge is to identify the one action. Well, one action, the initial action to me must be an honest assessment of your current organization to assess the digital maturity level and clear road mapping, as Marcelo was saying earlier. This is key for transforming data into the information we expect to get and the answer we expect to get from the digital twin. So assessment and road mapping.
Fantastic. Ben?
Yeah, Alessandro said honest assessment of your organization, and I would extend that even and say an honest assessment of yourself and your own leadership style. So it's a behavioral ask for me. Education and upskilling are necessary but not sufficient, to steal Vaseem's terminology there. So I would ask every leader, be introspective. Ask yourselves, are you a know-it-all leader or are you a learning leader? And if the answer is know-it-all leader and command control, then what can you do to help adapt and change that so that you become more of a learning leader, more vulnerable, more willing to listen and incorporate new tools? And then I think from that, those other aspects, the education, the upskilling, those then become consequences and outcomes from that change.
Fantastic. Shannon?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Alessandro and Ben said, and I would add that, we have this ability to move at speed and at scale now with the technologies that are available to us. We just can't let that speed overtake the need for this people-focused approach that embraces diversity and enables a holistic view of all of our systems and also the communities and customers that they serve.
No, I think it's fascinating. Marcelo?
Yeah, one action I would like to leave the audience with is the nature of work has changed, right? So embrace the change. You need to embrace developing the digital skills that are needed in order to operate a digital twin. So I would like to just give an example in Chevron that is, I think it's a great example. Chevron just a few years ago came out with a data science program that's open to the whole workforce, right? So it doesn't matter if you are an HR analyst or you're a petroleum engineer, you can apply for a data science program, and you can, as long as you meet the requirements, you will be able to participate on a data science that's 1 year long, and we will expose you to the foundational skills for data science, right? The objective is not to turn these people into data scientists, but it's what we call the citizen data scientists, right? So what is in need now for the companies is no longer the super ultra specialized data scientists, but we need to have a petroleum engineer that has data science skills, that can understand that behind the digital twin there is a model that is running, a predictive model. So know how it operates, how it works, how can you improve it, how can it be evolved. It's key to the development of the digital twin program. So have all the resources in place, invest on people, don't get worried or concerned that you don't have the proper skills now. It's a learning journey, so people need to adjust in order to make the digital transformation happen.
That's very well said, Marcelo. And Vaseem, your thoughts as you sort of bring us all together on what you're thinking
Okay.
as an action.
I think a number of participants have raised this. So I think one action I would counsel to people embarking on this journey and even on this journey is that we need to communicate, and the communication needs to come from the top. It needs to be a consistent communication. It needs to be a communication which sets the workforce at ease. But I think what we lack is that we have a technology approach, but we're not doing good communication from top down to explain at the C-suite level why this is not only is it essential, but it's almost existential for the industry, or the traditional oil and gas industry, is that we need to change. The other, and I know you said one, but I'm going to take the opportunity. One other thing for the industry to succeed is we need consistency on how we use data. Our challenge is that we do not have an industry taxonomy for data. So, and quite often, what we exchange is information, and we strip context from the information and we call it data. So we need to better manage data across the industry, almost like the subsurface industry has an open data plan. We don't do that in the industry. So until we get a common data standard in the industry, we are not going to be cost efficient. That's a technical answer. And the more, let's say, the high level answer is communicate from the top a consistent and clear message.
Fantastic, Vaseem. Thank you, and I agree. I cannot agree with you more on the focus there around sort of communication, starting from the top, and sort of this ongoing dialogue to continue to improve. So, there's a couple of questions from the audience here, and I'm probably not going to ask each one of you to respond. So I'll turn it over to you and see. I'll probably pick one of you, and then if somebody else wants to chime in, please do. But one of the things that I think has come up is a very interesting question, where we've been discussing digital twins and the relationship to technical pain points and the associated sort of improvements. What is your view on the role of digital twins to reduce business pain points for non-technical businesses? And I think the way that they're, if somebody else wants to chime in, please do. But one of the things that I think has come up is a very interesting question, where we've been discussing digital twins and the relationship to technical pain points and the associated sort of improvements.
So Sridhar, is your digital twin speaking now?
Yeah, it looks like it. Looks like I've got one already in real time here.
Yeah.
So I think the idea was, as we and the way that they're, I think the person is looking at what a non-technical business is essentially a business where there aren't physical assets. So what's the role of digital twins in a business where there aren't physical assets involved? So trading, financial organizations, etc. So maybe Shannon, I'll turn it over to you. See if you want to take a crack at it, and then just have any of you sort of chime in with thoughts. Maybe one more person after that.
I'm excited that you pointed to me. I think that this is a challenge that we've been looking at from the process perspective. Even when there are organizations that have physical assets, how do we digitize our processes? How can we represent those in a digital format? And I think, something else that came up, using this, Vaseem said, we don't have standards, and figuring out ways that technology can support us, with semantic web ontologies or different representations of pulling in technologies to help us navigate the differentiation between all these different data sources and pulling those into one unified format with meaningful representation of what we're trying to achieve. So I would say that there's not a simple answer to that, but leveraging standards and processes, using things like BPMN 2.0, different standards that do exist, and leveraging those types of things to enable our technologies to support us even when we don't have physical assets. So even when we're trying to do something that is digitally representing something more abstract, like a business process, for example, being able to leverage standards and also the semantics that enable us to understand what's actually going on and how those are connected to our systems and our documentation.
I can't agree with you more, Shannon. You're absolutely right. Is that no matter what kind of a business you're in, a physical asset, it doesn't have to be a turbine or an automobile or a platform or rotating equipment or non-rotating equipment. It can also be business processes, which really do form the core of, as the person represented it, as a non-technical sort of business. There's one more question, so maybe I'll ask that as well, and maybe I'll turn this one to you, Ben. And if you can sort of give me a 30-second response on, I think we'll start with a problem, right? And the question is, what if somebody is in a greenfield space and maybe they're entrepreneurial, they're just starting out, and they're not identified a problem yet? How would you sort of look at that? What would be a perspective from there? How would you start in that?
First of all, I'd say I'm really jealous. But second of all, I'd say that it doesn't have to be problem solving. I think Vaseem said about the hammer looking for the nail. So it doesn't have to be problem solving. I am jealous of that scenario because you get to start with a clean slate and a blank canvas. And so it becomes less of a how do I correct problems, and now you could, back to my comment at the beginning, you can start thinking, what is the future going to look like, and then how bright and prosperous can the future be? And that's where bringing in the digital twin lets you extrapolate out to say, in my wildest dreams, I could make this greenfield do, and you can insert there, and you're not bound by limitations or all the concerns of what you can't do in the past. So I don't know if that was 30 seconds. That's the best I can do.
No, that's perfect, and I do, I do agree with you on the jealous part, because you're starting with a clean slate, as you said, a blank canvas, and intro of the future, and you can start to sort of take liberties there, creative liberties there as well. Vaseem, I think you mentioned moving from buggies and carts to, gas-powered vehicles, into electrical vehicles, into drones, and into sort of unmanned systems, and so on and so forth. So all these are paths to the journey that we're all on. So I know we have just a few seconds here. So first of all, I would like to thank our panelists, all of you, each one of you. It's just been fascinating to have you all and hear each perspectives. You bring a wealth of experience. And as I summarize sort of what we discussed today, I think I'll probably say a few things, right? What is a digital twin? It is where it has data, it has models and visualization sort of at a minimum. It does because it is change management. It is about processes, and it is a technology enablement of a digital thread that weaves through people and processes. So essentially, as leaders, we want you all to introspect, know whether you're a know-it-all leader or communicate what you've learned and communicate what you're listening. Create an environment of trust, because trusting in people, trusting in your technologies, trusting in your processes is very, very critical as you embark on or continue on this journey. The nature of work is changing, and so don't be afraid of it, embrace it, and don't be afraid to be wrong. It's okay to make, a few mistakes. You don't have to be precise when you start, but you have to start. Otherwise, as Alessandro said, you'll be in this analysis process mode. You'll never. So to end it all, I would say that as leaders, let's all work together to go engineer happiness. To quote you, Ben. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your time.